Fun fact: in 1988, a man named Sarkis Soghanalian sent over 26 planes to deliver humanitarian aid to the Armenian part of the Soviet Union after it was hit by a devastating earthquake. His efforts were much hyped up by world leaders, including future President George H.W. Bush, who said that Soghanalian's efforts strengthened the ties that unite mankind. Not so fun fact: Soghanalian was one of the most notorious global arms dealers operating at the time, and just 3 years later, in 1991, Bush's administration would file federal charges against him for his role in building up Saddam Hussein's weapons stockpiles. The charges were, of course, disputed by Soghanalian, who claimed that the US government was well aware, if not outright supportive, of his deals with Hussein as part of the Iran-Iraq war. Soghanalian said, "The Americans knew what I was doing. Every minute, every hour. If I drank a glass of water, they were aware of it and what kind of water it was." Soghanalian was able to send billions in arms to Iraq, landing his biggest deal when he came into possession of howitzer artillery valued at $1.4 billion. In the late 90s, Soghanalian attempted to airdrop 10,000 AK-47 rifles into Peru for the government's war effort, but history had other plans, and the airdrop was received by the FARC militia in Colombia, who were actively fighting a war against the US-backed government there. Soghanalian's reach was truly global, with deals in the Middle East, Latin America, and North Africa, earning him the title of the Cold War's largest arms merchant. He was eventually arrested and jailed, but only served 2 years for allegedly cooperating with the United States government. War is a really nasty business that leaves deep personal traumas on those involved. But to a few individuals, it's not personal, it's just business. Soghanalian's dual reputation as both a philanthropist and a merchant of war is one of the many complicated legacies left by the subjects of today's video, history's wildest arms dealers. Being both a benefactor and a bringer of death isn't as strange as it sounds. After all, playing both sides is an all too common tactic for men like these. The perfect example of this is Basil Zaharoff, a man who received as many government accolades as condemnations. Zaharoff started out as your average con man, on the run from the police for posing as a prince so he could marry 2 women at the same time, and it's said he held various respectable jobs, such as an arsonist for a corrupt fire brigade in Constantinople. Fact: his dealing in weapons started off small, before taking off as an early marketer of both the Maxim gun, one of the first automatic machine guns, and the submarine, 2 instruments that would totally change the face of modern warfare. It's with the submarine that Zaharoff would start to develop his own personal business model of selling faulty but deadly weapons to opposing sides of the same war. He sold submarines to both the Greeks and the Turks, who, at the time, were 2 of the bitterest rivals on the world stage, and he became intimately involved in World War I. There are even some rumors that he started the war for his own personal profit. Zaharoff was noted for his corrupt, yet holistic approach to war, not only selling weapons, but using newspapers he owned as propaganda machines for his own benefit and the benefit of whoever wanted to pay him the most. He was also a benefactor to many world governments, earning him top accolades and honors, including being named commander of the French Legion of Honor. He also helped establish several military hospitals, ensuring he would profit from soldiers both entering and exiting the war. After decades of selling badly built, backfiring munitions to armies all across Europe, Zaharoff retired and bought the famous Monte Carlo casino in Monaco, where he died at nearly 90 years old. Next up is Li Fangwei, aka Karl Lee, who holds the distinction of being one of the few Chinese nationals on the FBI's most wanted list. Fun fact: Lee's whereabouts are currently unknown, although many suspect he's being held in a detention facility in Dalian, China. Lee is widely believed to be responsible for supplying the Islamic Republic of Iran with ballistic missile components. Lee rose to prominence by using his family's deep ties to China's People's Liberation Army to hold official positions throughout the Chinese government. One of those positions was the head of a charcoal plant, which stood accused of some pretty harmful business practices. The plant allegedly dumped toxic waste into the surrounding areas, leading to a massive sanitation problem and a noted uptick in birth defects and mortality around the plant. The US government currently has a $5 million bounty out for Lee, causing quite a bit of tension between the 2 governments. Lee hasn't been seen in years, leading some to propose he's being held in Dalian not as a prisoner, but under the protection of the Chinese government while continuing to supply Iran with missile components. To wrap things up, we saved the worst for last. Viktor Bout, the main influence for Nicolas Cage's character in the film Lord of War. Fact: after serving more than a decade behind bars for selling arms to terrorists, Bout was released in a recent prisoner exchange with Russia for American basketball player Brittany Griner and a handful of others. But that's only the latest development in Bout's nearly unparalleled arms dealing career. He started off in the Soviet military before moving into the air freight business, supposedly transporting goods such as flowers and frozen chickens, as well as soldiers on their way to conflicts. It's around this time that the CIA began to suspect that Bout was actually running small arms into Afghanistan. Viktor's airships were widely suspected of running weapons to several locations that were subject to arms embargoes, earning him the nickname the Sanctions Buster. Bout was also heavily suspected to be the main supplier of weapons in the Bosnian War, one of modern Europe's deadliest conflicts. In fact, around 200,000 AK-47 rifles went missing on their way from Bosnia to Iraq. The carrier responsible for the loss was owned by none other than Viktor Bout. Bout went on to supply armed conflicts in the Congo, Afghanistan, and Lebanon. And in yet another example of the duality of arms dealers, Bout was a critical asset for the American supply lines in Iraq, while actively being accused of working against US interests elsewhere in the world. He was finally put behind bars as a result of an elaborate sting operation set up by US forces. Agents posing as representatives for a Colombian rebel faction set up a meeting with Bout in Thailand. Bout was arrested by the Thai Royal Police and extradited to the US amid fierce protests by the Russian government. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison, which, as you already know, he didn't serve out. Upon returning to Russia, Bout ran for and won a seat in one of the country's legislative bodies, further blurring political lines. Breaking fact. So we had to come back to this video because, as we were editing it, news broke that Viktor Bout has re-entered the world of arms dealing, brokering a small $10 million deal with Yemen's Houthi rebels who have famously attacked multiple international shipping vessels in the Red Sea. Anyways, back to the video. The film Lord of War ends similarly enough. An arms merchant ends up behind bars, but he's confident he'll be released, because men like him are necessary in the modern world. So while running guns is a very dirty business, it's still a business, and there will always be businessmen backing it. Because, as Yuri Orlov says, sometimes governments need arms dealers like him to supply forces they can't be seen supplying. The legacy of these men speaks to the complicated nature of war, weaponry, and government. And if war never changes, neither will the systems that back it.